welcome to the latest edition of the Irish Rally podcast. This episode is brought to you in association with J&J Services, main agents for Hobbyweld Welding Gas, the rent-free gas bottle. Welcome to another edition of the Irish Rally podcast. On this week's show, I'd like to be joined by Rory Kennedy, four-time Irish Tarmac Championship winning co-driver. And Rory, great to have you on the podcast. Look, it's unfortunate, I suppose, the first topic we have to talk about when we have you on the podcast is the death of Brian Patterson, who sadly passed away during the week at the age of 76. Brian is someone who you obviously knew very, very well. And, we'll begin there, I suppose, by paying tribute to Brian.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. First of all, thank you for having me on. And I suppose it's very fitting in the week it's in it, where everybody's sort of. I was shocked even to come to terms with the news that Brian Patterson had left or had died during the week or died earlier in the week, which is tragedy for the motorsport world in Ireland. As you know, like Brian's has been involved in rallying for longer than I care to remember. He's even at it longer than I am. I'm sure he's nearly 50 years in the game, and he's almost one of those characters who's ever present through all the decades of rallying. From way back in the 70s right through until the present day. And, Brian was, he was a very, very talented journalist, first of all. And he was very much part of the specialist motorsport journalists in terms of whereby any of the motor publications in the UK and Ireland relied on Brian to come up with a proper story and the true account of the events. And because of his in-depth knowledge of the events and also of the competitors, each and every crew and team in the rally, it was a very reliable source to source any information from, and pretty much it was spot on, and it was very well received and very well respected by the entire rally fraternity. And I mean, that goes all the way down to competitors, drivers, co-drivers, all the teams, mechanics, tire men, and also not forgetting the organisers who also relied on him for feedback on their, because he was the first person to go around the stages, if you can imagine, to do his own notes. Obviously, as he did, he provided commercial notes for many years. So really, he provided a sort of a final draft for the organisers who went through the stages, made the notes and made recommendations to the organisers as well. So, like, it was a huge part of rallying through the years and really a friend to everybody.
Yeah, indeed. And as you touched on there, kind of covered all the bases is probably the best way of putting it, because everyone that has followed Irish rallying over the years will be, very familiar with the rally news sheets that you'll be getting, and they were kind of almost the sole thing to keep people informed that were out in the stages, because you didn't really hear a whole lot about it elsewhere. Yeah,
for sure. It was a unique way of doing it. Like that all developed from many years ago when they had the Ballyreen Bugle for the Donegal Rally way back in, I think it was either late 70s or very early 80s. And Plum Tyndall and Brian Patterson and Liz Patterson were very much part of that. And the rally news sort of evolved from that. And, even if you think about it, to collate all the information and, to put it all on paper and type it up and print it and copy it and then bring it out and distribute it. And I'm not quite sure how many copies were distributed each time, but there were jakers everywhere you went. There was rally bulletins, right up to date information. And, that was long before mobile phones, long before the internet, long before the instant results or instant reaction that we find now with all the other mediums or all the other platforms that provide this sort of information at the drop of a hat. But it was essential back in the day, and it was something everybody loved. I, for one, after an event, particularly an event that we did well in, I, for one, always got a full set of bulletins. On the Monday or the Tuesday after the rally, I sat down and read the whole lot back again. That really was a great way of doing things. And a good friend of mine, James O'Brien from Cork, there's another very famous co-driver, sort of summed it up this week in saying that, Brian was a great friend to everybody. He provided a service really that was unique. And, I think it was very much a part of rallying in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. And only more recent times, the other modes of communication sort of came along and sort of made the rally bulletins sort of redundant.
Yeah, and I know James and the lads, just one of multiple posts that came up on Facebook over the last couple of days paying tribute to Brian. And there was one that kind of a real nice picture in particular was the one from CRS Photography when Brian's actually chatting to Paul Nagle and he got the cigarette in the mouth. And it's just one of those kind of unique looking photos, and I just thought it was great.
Yeah, like rain, hail or snow, he was out there doing his job, and more often than not with the weather we have in Ireland, you can be sure it was raining, and he was always there at the end of the stage, and he had a very good way, because like all top sportsmen, rally drivers are no different to golfers or footballers or whatever other sportsmen you want to talk about, but they're no different in terms that they have bad days as well as good days. So you might go to an event whereby normally you'd be expected to be right in the hunt and maybe winning an event, and maybe you were having one of them days where it just wasn't happening. And he was taking your times and he was looking at you as much as says, what the frig's wrong with these boys? And, you're just having a day that it wasn't particularly happening the way you wanted it. And he had a great way of conveying that when he had a great skill in conveying that in the rally bulletins, and everybody I'm sure has got a mention and that from that angle through the years. But also I'd like to say that one of the highlights for me way back in the day was whenever you first made the bulletin, it was a very proud moment when you first found your name or your driver and a co-driver on the bulletin for whatever reason, whether you were in the top 10 or leading your class or third in your class. But Brian was a great man, that he was a real rally man at heart. He competed himself before he started doing this. And everybody was inclusive, and it didn't matter if you're number one or number 101 or so on. You still got the praise from Brian whenever it was due. And it was great. That was always a significant moment when your name appeared on the bulletin.
Yeah, and a very infamous montage that struck the mind straight away was when you and Bertie obviously won the 1990 championship down at the Rally of the Lakes, which is obviously the tail end of the year that time. At the end of Plumtindle's production, rather, just at the very end, it showed the Rally News document and your name was up on top, and it captured a very nice moment as well, because that's while it was called unofficial in many ways, that was it, signed, sealed, delivered officially. You were taking it as gospel, weren't you?
Oh, when it was on there, it wasn't really gospel. You could, that sort of brings the message, or just brought it home as such, But it was a great friend to everybody in rally, and Brian was, and I've been met right across the board. Often had a cup of tea with him, and in fact, this week I sat and I just looked up my phone there and I checked back some of the texts and messages we exchanged, through the years there, and it was very nice to read back through them. And he was always, like I say, he was a proper respected journalist as well, and he could sort of he had a unique way of writing the articles as well, that he really brought an accurate account of the event home, and that's why quite frequently he had articles in Motor News, Autosport, and various other publications. And to have something like that, and he had an intimate knowledge of Irish rallying from number 1 to number 101 to number 151, all the competitors, all the organisers and teams throughout, and he was quite happy to sit down with anybody and have a cup of tea and shoot the breeze and have the crack about rallying. He's a very knowledgeable man, and I was very proud, I must say, to know him, and definitely we had the benefit of having him here. He was just a very, very big part of the rally fraternity for the past 40 years, more or less.
And just in terms of the pace notes, that was a massive deal, obviously, at the time, because, when you were starting out, pace notes were only kind of becoming a thing at that stage, a real thing. And he saw the gap there, and I think he got some help from Terry Harriman, I believe. And, he was a kind of a pioneer of that, really, wasn't he?
Well, he was, right back from the very introduction of pace notes again, back into Irish rallying. He was right there. And, of course, he provided, by virtue of doing that, he provided a foundation pretty much for the entire rally fraternity and how to make pace notes. So everybody started off and used Patterson's notes, and got to the point then, as they got quicker and evolved in the sport, they discovered then that the next step was to make your own notes. The next step forward in speeding up your own performance was making your own pace notes. And the foundation that was set by using the Patterson notes, and quite a lot of people evolved from that, And even, if I remember right, Eugene Donnelly and Paul Kelly used Patterson's notes right up through the 2000s, where they were winning all them rallies on a very frequent basis. So, they were very good at what they did. And again, very reliable. and something you could depend on when you're, at high speed. Like,
yeah, and obviously we pass on our regards to Liz and Michael and Chris and Jody and David and lads there as well on a very difficult week for the family.
Yeah.
Rory, just moving aside then, the other big news I suppose this week was the cancellation of the Wexford Stages Rally, which we had kind of harboured many hopes on going ahead, and I know even up as far as last night when we were chatting about getting onto this podcast here, we were kind of just before, I think, or just in around the time I was chatting to you about coming on and we were shooting the breeze, I think I only just got off the phone and we see the Wexford's cancelled. And look, it's unfortunate, but I suppose very understandable at the same time.
Yeah. By the way, the bulletin reads that it was postponed, not cancelled now. Well, that means we can read something into the future there. But anyway, that's what it reads. But first of all, you have to commend the Wexford Motor Club in taking the initiative that they were going to run this event. Back over a month or 6 weeks ago, they put it out there that they were going to do this or they were going to work towards it. And, when there was no other rallies happening virtually anywhere at that point, it was encouraging to see that and hear that from the Wexford Motor Club. So they need to, they need huge credit for that. And as I understand it, had a lot of planning, a lot of work done up until now. So it's an event I have done a few times, but not many times. But I do remember the Wexford stages are very challenging and very challenging. And I had a very bad accident there one time, if I remember right, with him and McCafferty, and many years ago. But very, very good event, and always one we would try to do on a yearly basis way back many years ago. But top marks them for taking it on them to try and do this. But really, with the government restrictions and sanctions, and even with the most recent development, what's happened, the announcement today, it's no wonder really that this event is in jeopardy. And it's probably, you have to feel sorry for the organisers. I'm sure they've done everything they could. Motorsport Ireland issued a directive there where only Irish competitors and crew and teams could take part. So that minimised or reduced the possibility of entries there alone. Look, it's a shame it's not going to happen, but we have to understand the reasons why. And I suppose really you just have to go along with it, and that's too bad really at this stage that the event's not going to happen.
Is it something you were kind of eyeing up, given the fact that there wasn't a whole lot else happening this year, that you were maybe going to try to get a spin down there?
Well, it wasn't out of the question, absolutely. I've been doing a few rallies with John Bonner in the past year or two on a Mark II, and he had sort of mentioned to me about the Wexford Rally, and of course there was nothing certain at that point, so we said we'd consider it because we're just waiting away. I think, was it the 5th of August? Or what was the final deadline?
6th and 7th of September, I think it was. First week of September.
Yeah, but I mean, I think at one point they said they would confirm, during the month of July, they said at some point in August.
That's right. Yeah,
I think the 5th of August was when they were going to issue the regs if the event was going to happen or so on. But
and anyway,
it's very understandable. It's very understandable, and I say in view of what's happened even today in the announcements and the increased cases there, it's really no wonder that this isn't going to happen. Like.
Yeah, and look, you just don't know. I mean, from the get-go with this podcast, when I was chatting to Mick Cody about it, obviously the guys were very much gung-ho for it to happen, but like there's an asterisk beside everything at the moment, and I was chatting to a couple of guys involved in GA and stuff, and it's just one of those things. There's an asterisk with everything. There's an element of doubt, and I think you really can only go from week to week, can't you?
Seems to be the way it is. I am back to hearing the GA. They were saying on the radio today that they need to take a better, more responsibility and locally, and maybe not have as many outings or as many games. Like, just heard that on the radio today. I was a bit surprised, like locally. But anyway, it's just. The times we're living in at the moment, and it's everybody has to take personal responsibility and do their bit, and a lot of sports are affected drastically, but look, that's only one part. You just pity anybody who's been affected by this and has to deal with it, and really that's where the real hardship lies.
Oh, absolutely. I suppose the other thing to note as well is that I think the Killarney Historic Rally did have another day possibly secured. Again, it's all subject to what may or may not happen. But look, hopefully we're in a position where we can see something kind of going ahead. But it's very difficult on the likes of you guys. I mean, how have you kind of been punching in the weekends? Because this is obviously alien to everyone. But for you guys that love the sport, that would have been out very, very regularly, How difficult has it been kind of come weekend time, and what are you kind of doing to fill the void?
Yeah, well, as you know, every year we've had we're competing in a championship, and we had about 6 or 7 or maybe 8 rallies a year, major rallies, and obviously that's all gone now. So, look, we're no different than anybody else, Kevin. We just have to deal with it, and I do a good bit of cycling and stuff like that as well, and so I've spent a good bit of time at that. But you miss doing it, and it's not just unique to Ireland. This is pretty much across Europe anyway. There's some events beginning to roll out in Italy there now, and even in Portugal there. So it's beginning to creep back in again, and we all look forward to the day that we can get back out again. But there's not a lot to do, and I suppose same as any other sport. You just have to grin and bear it, and maybe keep a wee bit fit, and just be sure you're ready whenever the time comes when it kicks off again.
Do you have kind of flashbacks to 2001 with the foot and mouth? I know that was obviously a very difficult year for more than the foot and mouth on your behalf, because obviously Bertie and Mark had passed that year as well. But is there some kind of comparison to be made to that year at all, in that there was obviously nothing happening?
Yeah, well, virtually no rallies at all in 2001 in Ireland, but quite a lot of the boys went to Belgium that year. It was quite frequent to have Irish drivers going to Flanders and going to Ypres and going to Haspengouw Rally, and this was, even though it's in Belgium, it's just probably an additional boat run, because you're still paying for the same hotel and entry fee and so on, so quite a lot of boys went there during them, but we haven't even got that option now, because really that hasn't even been an option. But 2001 was, as you say, was different for a lot of reasons. But I don't know, again, it's hard to say. You just hope that the thing is sorted, and there's a vaccine found for this dreadful virus, and that we can get back to normal as soon as possible.
And the race course sprints, I spoke to Killian Duffy about this. Would they be a goer at all, or is that any sort of an alternative? Because they were obviously a big success last time. Different circumstances, I know.
Okay. Well, look, it's an alternative, surely, and it's a day out and it's a bit of crack, and really that's what it's about. But for the more serious competitors who are doing championships, and we go from one major event to the next, every event is you go with your team and you have a plan on how you're going to compete and what you expect, and you look at the opposition and you weigh it up, and you go out and you try and do your stuff and win the event. But that's the way we approach rallies. But when you have an event like a rally sprint, it's all about a crack, and you go out and do your bit, and it's a day sport, and I suppose it keeps your hand in there. But for the clubmen, it's very good, and the more that can be encouraged. I think that I read there somewhere this week that they're even going to allow co-drivers now, so that's to be commended as well.
Yeah, and I suppose you mentioned the events in Italy there as well, Rory. Just while we're on it, a fantastic victory for Craig and Paul last week. And it's great to see, I suppose, and it's certainly doing Craig no harm when it comes to maybe getting a more consistent drive at a world level next year, perhaps.
Yeah, fair play to them. Fair play to the boys. Did a tremendous job in Italy last week, and they really showed them from the start what it's all about. And Craig's his reputation is just growing and growing all the time. And when he can go there and do that and beat pretty much the best European drivers that were there, it really, really is doing his chances no harm at all with Hyundai. And he's nominated obviously for the next WRC event, which is great as well.
That's correct.
So no, it's very good, and he was on the Michelins this week, or last weekend. So that's you see a marked improvement compared to Rally Elba the week before that.
Yeah, and
it doesn't mind me saying
that. I know. He's back with the MRF guys for the next event, I believe, too. So
yeah. Well, that's development, you see. So whereby Michelin's obviously already fully developed and tried and tested tire, so fair play. It's great opportunity for them. I'm delighted for them, and it flies a flag for Irish rallying too. Don't forget, and we've never been in short supply of drivers and co-drivers. So it's great to keep the consistency of that going worldwide.
Yeah, and I know Callum has kind of had poor enough luck the last couple of events, but he's due out in a couple of weeks again. And Callum's a guy who's been spoken about very, very highly, and I never think of Callum, I think of Cocoa Pops, because obviously he was asked what you had for breakfast after one of Cillian Duffy's interviews, I think, and he's like, "Oh, I had the Cocoa Pops or whatever." I think it was perhaps Donegal a couple of years ago or something, but
Yeah.
he's a guy who looks like he really could make a break as well.
Yeah, he certainly does. He's had bad luck there recently in them couple of events there, which is a pity. Like, but I think he got last week's rally pretty much done. At least he got the experience of doing the stages and so on. There was near the end when they retired. But no, Callum's a great prospect, and Brian Hoy, great co-driver, and a great team together. I watched a good bit of their in-car, and I have to give them top marks. So they're very good and work very well together. No, he's one of the top up-and-coming drivers. Obviously, here in Ireland, he's shown great speed last year on, if you remember right, in Killarney and Moss Gap. He cleaned everybody, including Craig Breen and all. So, he's undoubted speed, and it's a bit like getting it all together, because you've just got to not just do it in one stage, you have to do it in all the stages. So, I've no doubt Callum's going to be right there, one of the top drivers in this country, without a doubt. Like.
Yeah. Are we closer now than what we ever were, I suppose, to getting consistent results on the world stage? And I'll double this up by asking, do you think if perhaps you had those opportunities going back in time that you could have made a real fist of it? Is there anything there that suggests maybe that in your own mind, Jesus, I could have been sitting in with one of these kind of big guys? Because I know you competed worldwide and stuff, but on a more consistent level with one of the biggest drivers in the world, we'll say. Like, do you ever think back and look at those opportunities, or was there opportunities there at any stage that you just couldn't come to? I know money's a massive thing, Rory, and stuff, but like, was there ever a situation there where that kind of opportunity presented itself? And do you think maybe if you could turn back time and look at what these guys are doing now, that you might have a better chance?
Well, I'd always I always say, or always mention this word ambition. When I talk about competing and what you want to do. What your ambition is really is what drives you. Like. I was quite content because, not forgetting, I had a business and 6 or 7 people employed as well.
Yeah.
And I had not to do rallies, maybe 7 or 8 or 9 rallies a year, major rallies back in the day. And, I relied entirely on my staff to keep the business going. And thankfully they were excellent, and I'm very grateful to them, and they looked after the business. But we all had good jobs and we're all working hard to make the thing pay. So the priority for me was the business at all times. The sporting end was very good because I got great opportunity and I could pop in and drop out and got lots of opportunities to compete, but it wasn't on every event, but it was enough that I could keep the business going and I could also go and do these events. But to go for full time, it's a very fickle sport, and you only have to look at some of the drivers who are out there, and even the co-drivers, even the top men, like, you're only there for a certain length of time, like, and you have to earn enough during that time to do the rest of your days. So I came from the school of hard work, which is the Fisher School. And I know the first thing you had to do was put bread on the table. And to do that, you had to get up in the morning and go to work. And that was my priority, even though I still had the ambition to do well in rallying. And I'm very pleased that I got as far as I did. And I managed to sort of juggle work and rallying together and get as far as I did. And, there may have been opportunities to go further, but because of the business, I was constrained to some extent. So I was quite happy to do what I was doing. I was able to balance the two.
Yeah, fair play to you, because many people would have kind of sacrificed everything, taken a gamble, and ended up with absolutely nothing. But when you look there, to me anyway, you're probably our greatest ever co-driver, and you see some of the guys that have been out there and won world titles and been so competitive, and I wouldn't see why Rory Kennedy couldn't have been there beside one of those, but I know there's a lot of mitigating factors as well, isn't there, apart from those that we've kind of touched on?
There is, of course. How do I put this? I always compare drivers and co-drivers like golfers and caddies. You watch the golfer, the PGA's on there at the moment. You watch that. Nobody has any idea. Most people don't have any idea the amount of input a caddy has into them top golfers' performances. And that's very much or it's very akin to a driver and a co-driver. Now, the co-drivers, that's a lot of input, and you can hear him and see him, and he sprays the champagne at the end of the rally. If he wins, the freaking caddy just heads off to the locker room with the golf clubs. But it's a very similar input to the performance. So You mentioned Callum there, Callum and Brian Hoy. They're a very good team. If you watch their in-car and listen how well in tune the two boys are, like, that is the first thing you need. You need that sort of connect between the driver and the co-driver, that it works, and the two boys have the same target and have the same ambition to do well. That's absolutely what you need to make it work. Like, so, it's not everybody. I can go and jump in with Niall McShay and go and do a rally out for him wherever, and we can jump in and it just happens right away. There are some drivers I can jump in and it doesn't just happen because that sort of chemistry is not there, But when you have professional drivers doing a professional job, you need the right boy beside you. You need the same fella beside you who has the same outlook and the same approach and is there to do the job. And those combinations aren't easy got. You can see them at the highest level in the World Championship. You seldom ever see a change of co-driver between the teams, unless, well, every now and again you'll see it, but you seldom ever, because good drivers find good co-drivers, and that's why they're successful.
Yeah. You strike me as a guy, every in-car I've ever seen, and just in general, ice in the veins. Like, do you do nerves at all?
Well, the first thing you need, if you're going to be a co-driver, is good nerves and a level. When I sit home, you even take on me and Gary Jennings there, people tell you Gary's crazy and he's just that and the other thing. But see, when he gets into the car and the helmets go on and the light goes green at the start of the stage, he turns into a different person. And his approach, like, I can sit there and read him the notes as if I'm reading a Sunday paper, and he just drives it. And everything is just calm. There's no drama. Everything is cool. And I know what he's able to do the job. He can rely on me to do my job, and everything just happens. And now, we don't always win, don't get me wrong, but we do win quite often as well, and occasionally, if you like. But you need that combination between driver and a co-driver. And like I said before, it's not easy getting that. There are examples of that, plenty of examples of that in this country anyway. But it's a unique partnership, and it's a special partnership, and it's a complex partnership. But when it works, generally the success comes after that.
Yeah. And is there any particular points in your career, I suppose, when you felt you kind of had to rein guys in? Obviously you had to do it quite regularly, but any kind of standout ones or maybe kind of funny stories when you felt lads were getting a bit carried away, or how did you crack the whip?
Well, occasionally that would happen. I'm trying to think somewhere. Here I've had quite a few accidents too, I can assure you, and I have the scars to prove it as well. But I'm just trying to think of a couple of incidents that happened. Maybe a good example.
I know. Like, just before you carry on, like when you went off a couple of times with the in-cars, one in particular, Bertie, in you go. It's like you could kind of see it happening just as it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, most of my drivers, the boys I'm with, and I don't need much encouragement, mind you.
Yeah.
They're all well on it, but that one you talk off, we had clipped a rock somewhere, and we didn't realize we had a front left-hand puncture. About 300 meters later, there was a tight right-hand corner. He turned in, it wouldn't go in. It wouldn't turn in, so we just understeered straight off the road into the shock brake. And of course, I was saying, in you go, but there was no going in.
Yeah.
But where could I tell you something good or something extraordinary? Oh, here, look, if you start me, you'll never get me stopped on these things.
Yeah.
Mark Higgins and me were doing the Manx Rally one time, and we were in the Stobart Group N car. So the whole championship was for Group N cars in that year. And we were racing Guy Wilkes, and there's one stage called Drewdale, which is it's the one you go down around Brandywell Cottage, and then you go down the narrow bit. And Mark knows it better than any road in the whole wide world. Like. So we're bombing down there, and I was thinking to myself, we're just very near the limit here, because the car was bouncing all over the place and just about staying on the road. Like. And I was just reading the notes and trying to stay calm and trying to give him a wee bit of a, to steady up and, calm it a wee bit. Like. And of course, I could see it coming before it happened. Like, and we had a bump and we got onto one of these tank slappers, and the accident took about, I would say, 300 meters before we finally got stopped. But it was one of them ones I could see coming for a good while. But because we're so competitive, and because the British Championship was at stake, and maybe one in that rally was at stake, we're really, really on the limit. And unfortunately, that day went over the limit and ended up in the shock and out of the rally. And I could see it coming, like, and there's not much you can say really, and these things happen. So it's avoiding them happening. That's what it's all about.
is like, you know, in even say up as far as last year and looking ahead to next year, the enthusiasm doesn't seem to have waned any bit either. Like, do you kind of find that maybe you're that bit more relaxed even again, and you're kind of enjoying it, you know, because obviously you're very experienced at it at this stage. Is it a case of just chilling and enjoying it, or obviously you're still competitive, like, but I mean, what I'm trying to say is, have you seen a difference in Rory Kennedy maybe 20 years ago to Rory Kennedy now, or are you the same kind of Rory Kennedy in terms of just, you know, you take the job seriously, but ice in the veins, chilled, no nerves? You know, what's the kind of crack there? What's going through the mind? What do you kind of think, I suppose, in relation to the last 20 and how you've evolved?
Yeah. Well, obviously, 30 years ago, you were a different person 30 years ago than I am today. And I mean, you're younger, fitter, very impressionable, and wanting to make it happen, and in a hurry to get there as well. Like, so, you know, I was involved with the Fisher team for 12 or 13 years. And we had the best cars, best teams, best mechanics, best everything to make it happen. Like, and that is an education in itself, you know. And, you know, I'm very proud of that period because we won numerous rallies. We won 19 rallies or something to that effect, 4 championships. And, you know, when you're coming up through it, all of that makes you a better person, better co-driver as well. Because once you get the winning mentality, and once you sort of get that into the system, like, success really breeds success. And, you know, you become better. Doesn't matter what you do. If you're any kind of sport, again, as I say, if you're playing football, you're playing GAA, you're a golfer, you're a cyclist, whatever, the more you win, the better you become, and the more it sort of you become more established as such and more confident. And of course, I'm now at, I suppose, near the end of my career than the beginning of my career, but I'm still quite happy to go and compete, even with very fast top drivers. Like, I'm quite happy to do that. I feel I bring a lot to the table. I feel my experience, I can convey that now to my new drivers and stuff. And really, I learned all that through them years, all the way up, even from the very beginning. Like, so, ice in the veins, if you like. But I'm cool enough. I don't get that nervous. I don't get nervous really at all before events. But nevertheless, I like to be sharp, and I like to be on the ball. And the way I do that and the way I retain that is my own physical fitness. I work hard on that to, you know, to stay very fit and be able to sit in with these boys. And because when you're physically fit, you're mentally fit. And really, as a co-driver, that's what you need to be like.
Yeah, it's so important. And it's a piece of advice I'd give to anyone, I suppose, especially with COVID going on, to try and just get out and clear the head, because it's so important when people don't have the outlet. And in this case, we're talking the Irish Rally podcast, but regardless of what sport it is, I would certainly make that suggestion. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. So that's what gets the juices flowing for you. You feel good when you're out doing a bit of exercise, the head is clear, and you know you're at your peak then, that you can go and do the job.
Yeah, for sure. Right. And it's something, it's great I do it principally because of the rallying and so on, but it's great to clear the head, as you say. It's great, you know, gives you sort of a quicker step, and you're good in fitness. Very healthy way to be, and a good lifestyle to have. Like, now, not everybody agrees with that, but anyway, that's what I do, anyway.
Yeah. So listen, Rory, that's where we are, I suppose, for now, in terms of this episode of the Irish Rally Pod. Hopefully we'll have a bit of action to talk about. I did listen to your episode with Kevin Lendening. Fine job. Two fantastic episodes in 2 parts. And obviously I tuned into Trevor Red News one as well, that you featured on. And the Sprint boys are doing some good stuff. I was listening to Niall McShay's one during the week. So we've got some great content at the moment, and it's great to be able to listen to all these stories, like.
Well, you did mention earlier, what do we do to pass the time, and what do we do now to keep us occupied? Well, I think we've reinvented ourselves in a lot of ways, in particular with the podcasts, and there's some unique characters coming up on it. And Jerry McGarty was on there one night with the Sprint Championship boys, and it was very entertaining, because I'm not sure if you know Jerry or not, but Jerry has put in a lot of young drivers through his hands in terms of development and all, right back to Mark Fisher, Ali Fisher, the Moffats, Stephen Wright, I could go on, Chris Meek, all went through Jerry's, if you like, Jerry McGarty's Rally Academy. But Jerry was on that night, and he mentioned them and the different things that happened, and it was the best bit of entertainment to listen to for a long time. So these type of podcasts sort of I know everybody can't sit down and spend an hour and a half, or even more than that, sitting and listening to them. But it's entertaining enough if you're driving along to put them on and hear the crack, and people relax when they're doing them. It's all the more entertaining, and it's a good thing to do. I'm a big fan of these podcasts. I'm pleased I've done a few. I enjoyed doing the few I've done, and I've enjoyed very much listening to all the other people as well, because it's just good to catch up, and a good way of hearing all the old stories.
Yeah, and the last thing I'd say on it, like, if it wasn't for these podcasts, I don't think we'd be hearing half of these stories. And I mean, it would be just a real shame if we never got to hear some of this stuff, which we've been hearing over the past couple of weeks, So obviously it's a great thing that we have this kind of medium to be able to hear the stories that like yourself are telling.
Yeah, and it seems to have developed over the past couple of months. Like, they've gotten better and better, and huge variety of people and different angles and different stories. Like, I'm a co-driver, and you've plenty of drivers on there. We've had Jerry, as I say, was on there from the Sprint Championship, and he overlaps the Sprint Championship with the rallies as well. And Bill Adair was on there, and Bill's a tire man, and he's been at every rally since as long as I can remember, for the past 40 years. Bill, he competes in the Sprint Championship as well. So it was great to hear him on, as different angle, and he's just very entertaining as well. Some great early irons, like.
Yeah, well, listen, Rory, it's been a pleasure having you on the Irish Rally podcast here, and I do hope I'll be able to catch up with you again at some stage, and we'll have a right old chat. Some lovely bits of memorabilia that we caught there just before we started the recording as well, and Jesus, that's what I give to be in that room. But thanks a million anyway for coming on with us here. All right,
Kevin, thanks for that.